Before you begin, promise me you'll watch this video all the way to the end. There's a turn in the last moments that will change how you remember every chapter. Chapter 1. The First Spark. I was there when they first noticed each other. Not as a participant, but as a quiet witness who could hear what the night air would not admit. Elena stood on a wooden chair in the crowded student union. Dark hair pinned back, voice razor-sharp and brimming with conviction. She spoke of factory workers and river pollution, of the weight of silence and the price of comfort. She was not interested in being liked. She was interested in being heard. Across the room, Cole leaned against a bulletin board, where playbills drooped and lost mittens waited for owners who never returned. He was handsome in that effortless, unstudied way that city boys seem to inherit. A gentle smile, sleeves rolled, a notebook open to a blank page. He laughed softly at a joke someone told, then fell quiet when Elena's words sharpened the air. He didn't agree with everything. Later he'd say, "You can't shout people into the light." But he listened. That night, the university's radio station smelled like dust and hot wires. Elena barged in, breathless, flushed from an argument with the dean over a cancelled teach-in. Cole was there for his late-night literature slot, reading oceanic paragraphs in a calm voice that made sleepless students exhale. When her protest spilled onto the airwaves an unsanctioned minute, maybe two, he didn't cut her off. He adjusted the levels, lifted his hand to quiet the hallway noise, and gave her voice a clear path. After, in the corridor, they stood face to face. She thanked him, and he shrugged. He wore insouciance like a well-tailored jacket, yet his eyes were curious, receptive. "You believe in something," she said. "I believe in sentences," he replied. "They can move people. People move people. Maybe we can try both." The winter outside was raw enough to make them both shiver, but their words were warm, and they walked to the corner diner where the coffee was bitter but endless. I remember watching them through the fogged glass. Two silhouettes leaning in, discovering the way a soft smile can coexist with a fierce will. They began, as so many begin, with the assumption that what attracted them would be enough to carry them through what divided them. Chapter 2. Small apartment, big voices. Their first place together was a narrow apartment above a produce stand, where the scent of underripe pears mingled with the ink of Cole's drafts. Elena hung flyers on a string across the living room, a clothesline of causes, and Cole tacked index cards to the wall, arranging dialogue like constellations. They shared a typewriter, and sometimes at midnight, the sound of keys echoed like rain. They made a ritual of conflict and a ritual of reconciliation. It was not combat, not exactly, but a choreography of belief. Elena went to meetings that ran long and sent her home furious. Cole argued for nuance and patience, warning that righteous fires could burn good timber. 2. They loved the stark difference between them, as if it were a third person in the room, sitting with them on the rug, insisting that all love stories require a fulcrum. He sold a short story to a magazine with glossy pages. She taped the check inside their pantry door, as if money could be admired alongside spices and dry beans. She was proud, he saw it in her eyes. But when an editor suggested he remove a paragraph that critiqued a certain company, one that sponsored the very magazine, Cole shrugged and removed it. "One paragraph doesn't change the truth of the piece," he said. Elena stared at him like he had sold something irreplaceable for the price of a taxi. "Truth doesn't need permission," she said. "I need a career. You need a conscience that isn't for rent." They did not speak for a day, and then he touched the small scar on her wrist from a high school accident, and she softened. Forgiveness was a muscle they were training. It often ached, but it made them strong. When spring arrived, rain brightened the city. Elena's protest group organized a march by the waterfront, and Cole covered it for a newspaper. He wrote her as a character. Not her name, not her exact features, but anyone who knew her would have recognized the spine that held the movement upright. The piece was tender and unsparing, and it made her cry in the kitchen while the kettle sang. "You see me," she whispered. "Even when you disagree, you see me." He kissed the top of her head. "I always will," he said, believing it the way one believes in sunrise. Chapter 3. The Fire and the Flood. The summer that spun their names into the city's whispers began with a fire at the garment warehouse. It was not the historic tragedy school children learned about, but it rhymed with it. In negligence, in locked exits, in the way smoke erases distinctions between shift workers and the dreams they carry. Elena stood on the curb with a bullhorn, naming the dead, refusing the easy phrases. Cole stood beside her with a notebook, then crossed the tape to ask officials questions he had never found the courage to ask before. She was proud, so proud that she forgot for a moment the ways he frustrated her. Quietly, his reputation grew. Editors called. He was charming on panels, deft at deflecting rhetorical traps, and he knew how to make a room feel smarter. Elena's causes grew, too, and so did the scrutiny. Her group was accused of agitation by those who preferred their laws, like immaculate tablecloths, unspotted and used. She was hauled in for questioning after a demonstration blocked the entrance to a donors gala. Cole waited on a hard bench until midnight, thumbing a dog-eared paperback. When she emerged, she was shook and triumphant, a creature forged in heat. "You didn't have to stay," she said, leaning into him. "Of course I did. Sometimes you make it look so easy." "It isn't," he said. "Not with you. But I like trying." They married in the city clerk's office, with 2 friends and a pencil bouquet. I signed as a witness, and it was one of my better signatures. They celebrated with falafel eaten on a stoop, grease staining a happy shape onto Elena's skirt. In their photos, you can see the promise of an ordinary future, bills and breakfasts, sheets clipped to a line in a backyard they didn't yet own. When the flood came, it did not announce itself. It slipped in as an invitation. A major publisher wanted Cole to write a novel about the city's soul. Elena squeezed his hands in both of hers, tears bright. "Take it," she said, "but write it your way." He began to disappear into rooms inside himself that no one else could enter. Elena understood that art requires absence, but absence can be a dangerous guest. She took on more duties in her volunteer network, organized a tenant union, and spoke in church basements where coffee was always burnt, but the listening was pure. Their dinners turned into briefings. Their bed, once a place of yielding, became the border between convictions. And then there was the night he returned from a publisher's meeting with glossy eyes. A corporation had expressed interest in adapting his book. It would mean money, he said, and reach. It would mean compromise, she replied. He sighed. Not everything is a transaction with the devil, Elena. Maybe not, she said, lower and steadier than before. But it's amazing how often the devil pays on time. Chapter 4. The Atlas of What Couldn't Be Carried. She discovered she was pregnant on a cold morning when the radiator churned like a ship's engine. Cole was asleep, his face younger in dreams. The test strip lay on the windowsill, and Elena stared at the faint line as if it were a street painted into a map at the last minute. She thought about the children she had cheered for at rallies, hoisted onto shoulders to see over the crowd. She thought about the world she wanted them to inherit. She woke him with a kiss and a small laugh, something between hope and fear. His eyes widened, and for a week he moved around the apartment as if the furniture had been rearranged, and he didn't want to stub a toe. He placed his palm on her belly, shyly, reverently. They spoke in whispers in case the future was eavesdropping, and yet the world outside their window did not grow any softer. When a blacklist blew through the city's arts and media circles, Oh, they didn't call it that. But the chill was unmistakable. Elena's name appeared on a donor's private ledger. Cole's editor suggested that, to protect the book, he should keep his distance from certain noisy associations. Cole relayed it as gently as he could, but there is no gentle way to ask someone to be less of who they are. I won't apologize for my voice, she said. I would never ask you to. You just did. We're about to be parents, he said. I'm thinking about what security means. I'm thinking about what integrity means. The apartment shrank. The laundry basket looked accusatory. Their friends took sides in hushed kitchens. I tried to keep them talking, recommending the sort of compromises you only recommend when it is not your soul on the table. Once, Elena asked me if I thought love could outlast contempt. I told her she was not contemptible, hoping the semantics would matter. One night, after a meeting in which Elena convinced a roomful of exhausted tenants to hold the line, she came home to find the pages of Cole's novel rearranged. He had cut a scene she loved, where a janitor's hymn wove through a blackout. It dragged, he said. They wanted pacing. They? She asked softly. Who owns your night now? She slept on the couch. He slept in the bed. The baby turned a slow somersault inside her, practicing arrival, while the parents practiced leaving. Chapter 5. The parting without a scene. They did not explode. People assume the end comes with slammed doors and empty suitcases. But many love stories finish like a cup cooling on a windowsill, visible to anyone who passes. Cole's book came out and was a minor triumph. Elena's campaign won a rent cap that saved 100 families from being scattered like dandelion seeds. Neither achievement made them less lonely. They tried, God knows they did. They made a list of things they agreed on, and a longer list of what they would not discuss after 10 p.m. They cooked together on Sundays. He took her to a concert in the park and held her hand through the symphony's second movement, where the melody searched and searched before surrendering. She leaned her head on his shoulder and counted the weeks until she would meet their child. But their modes of being had grown incompatible, in the way that different climates make different trees. She craved declaration. He craved nuance. She needed to confront. He needed to persuade. They had loved each other in the present tense for so long that neither had words for the past without breaking. The day they signed the papers, snow smudged the edges of the city. The clerk had the sympathetic efficiency of someone who witnesses too many private wars. Elena, steady, placed her hand on her stomach. Cole signed with a pen that stuttered. They did not say goodbye, because goodbye is dramatic, and they had matured past drama into the quiet knowledge of necessity. When their child arrived, he had Elena's dark eyes and Cole's quiet mouth. They named him Simon, after a poet they both revered. They did not get back together. They did not make a ceremony out of that, either. They shared custody, like neighbors share a stoop, politely, grateful for the structure. Elena returned to organizing. Cole wrote another book, less praised, more honest. The wound became a scar, and like most scars, it itched in the rain. Chapter 6. The Way We Remain. Years later, I saw them meet again by accident outside a union hall where Elena was giving a talk. The city had changed. Glass taller than memory jutted into the clouds. Cole stood reading a flyer with her name on it, as if reading could slow time. She emerged from the hall with a coat too thin for the wind, her hair threaded with gray, her posture unbowed. He raised a hand. She smiled the kind of smile that belongs to a person who knows the inventory of her own heart. Your new book, she said. I read it. You kept the janitor's hymn. They can't cut what I never hand over again, he said, and the boyishness in him rose like an old song. Simon, with my sister this afternoon, she said. He's discovered chess. He thinks patience is a superpower. It is, Cole said. He got that from you. They walked down the block together. neither pretending that time could be unwritten. They did not flirt, not exactly. They remembered. There is a difference. He asked about her work, and she talked about winning small battles that mattered mightily to the people who lived inside them. She asked about his sentences, and he said writing had taught him that clarity is not the enemy of beauty. They laughed at a joke from a decade ago, and the laugh startled them with what it recovered. At the corner, Elena pointed to a poster tacked to a lamp post. His first book, the glossy reissue. A corporation had added a tagline without asking. Cole made a face, and Elena tilted her head. "You wouldn't have hated it when we were young," she said. "I wouldn't have known better," he replied. "You taught me the difference between being adored and being worthy." Elena was quiet. She reached up and straightened the collar of his coat. A single precise gesture. Not a caress, but not nothing. "We were never going to win against ourselves," she said, and it might have sounded like defeat if not for the warmth in her voice. "We were always who we are." "I still see you," he said. "I know," she answered. "I still see you too." They parted at the bus stop. She boarded. He stood on the curb, one hand raised, his breath a small cloud in the cold. When the bus pulled away, I watched his reflection linger in the glass longer than physics should have allowed. There is no spell in it, only the truth that the eye holds on where the heart has lived. People like to say that love fails when it does not last, as if longevity were the only metric by which we measure meaning. I know better. What lives between Elena and Cole is not failure, but a completed form. A bridge that did the work of carrying both of them to the shores they were destined for. It creaks when they cross in memory, but it holds. Sometimes, late on Sunday afternoons, I pass their old block. The produce stand is a coffee shop now, and no one knows that a century's worth of arguments once ripened upstairs. I imagine Elena at a microphone, her voice steady as a bell. I imagine Cole in a quiet room, finding the one sentence that will not lie, and I imagine Simon chessboard open, considering both the daring move and the patient one. He will learn, as so many do, that love is not a binary, not a victory or a surrender, but a set of coordinates you carry long after you fold the map. The way they were is not the way they are, and that is all right. The way they remain, respectful, altered, illuminated, is the proof that some stories do not end. They echo. If you are lucky enough to hear them, you will count yourself among the witnesses, too, and you will be grateful for the echo that finds you when the evening goes quiet. If this story moved you, please subscribe to the channel. Activate notifications so you don't miss new tales. Give the video a like, leave a comment with your favorite moment, and share it with someone who believes in love that lasts in its own way.